Welcome to Sleeping Facts. Tonight we'll take a quiet journey through time, not just to explore how we sleep, but how sleep itself has changed, from the very beginning of human history, all the way to the modern bedroom you rest in now. You see, sleep wasn't always something we did alone, in a soft bed, in a dark, quiet room. No. For most of our time on Earth, sleep was raw, communal, vulnerable, a delicate balance between rest and survival. Over thousands of years, our habits shifted, shaped by fire, by gods, by clocks, by light bulbs, and now by screens. So close your eyes, settle into your pillow, and let's drift back to where it all began. Imagine you're lying beneath the stars thousands of years ago. There's no house, no lock on a door, no mattress to sink into, just earth beneath you, maybe a bed of leaves. You hear the soft rhythm of wind through tall grass, the distant howling of animals. This was the nightly reality for early humans. In the Stone Age, sleep was not a solitary, protected act. It was communal, necessary, strategic. You would have slept near others, your family, your tribe, not just for company but for survival. Sleeping in groups increased your chances of staying alive. In the dark, predators lurked. Lions, leopards, hyenas. A sleeping human alone was vulnerable, exposed. But in a group there were more eyes, more ears, more bodies to respond if something stirred in the brush. This instinct, to stay near others at night, became deeply ingrained in our nervous systems. Even today, people often report feeling safer, calmer, and falling asleep more easily when someone else is in the room. A partner, a pet, a parent. That sense of shared safety is a biological echo from our earliest days. And it wasn't just about safety from the outside world. In tight-knit groups, people regulated each other. If a child cried out in sleep, others woke up. If someone wandered, someone else noticed. Our ability to micro-wake, to lightly stir throughout the night, is likely a result of those ancient systems, a way to check in briefly and ensure everything was still okay. In modern hunter-gatherer societies like the Hadza of Tanzania, we see this behavior today. Studies have shown that in these communities, someone is always awake. Even without assigning lookouts, their natural rhythms overlap in a way that ensures constant alertness. It's as if their sleep schedules are designed to protect the group as a whole, not just the individual. And yet, they don't report sleep problems. Despite multiple small awakenings and sleeping lightly, they feel rested. This challenges our modern idea that perfect, uninterrupted sleep is the goal. For early humans, that kind of sleep would have been dangerous. Deep sleep in isolation could be a death sentence. Instead, light sleep in groups was balance, a balance between rest and readiness. Even the position of sleepers mattered. Some anthropologists believe tribes may have arranged themselves in circles, backs together, facing outward. This formation allowed each person to monitor a different direction. Eyes open at different times, ears catching distant sounds. When one person moved, others felt it. When one woke up, others adjusted. The entire sleeping group was like a living organism, breathing, shifting, pulsing together. And yet this wasn't just about defense. Sleeping in groups meant warmth. Body heat was shared. Infants were kept close. Touch soothed anxiety and deepened bonds. Sleep then was also about connection. Imagine drifting off each night surrounded by the quiet breath of people you trust, feeling their presence, knowing you're not alone. In this way, group sleep wasn't just a habit. It was an essential part of being human. And though we no longer sleep in caves, though the wolves and shadows don't prowl outside our homes, that ancestral memory lingers in our longing to share a bed, in the comfort of a loved one sleeping nearby, in our pets curling at our feet. Our modern sleep still carries the fingerprints of ancient safety, of shared breath and firelight, of humans protecting each other through the night. As the stars move across the sky, the night stretches on. But in the ancient world, sleep did not happen all at once. Unlike today's continuous 7 to 8 hours, early human sleep was likely divided into two distinct parts. Historians and sleep researchers call this segmented sleep, or biphasic sleep. The pattern went something like this. A person would fall asleep shortly after nightfall, around 8 or 9 p.m., guided by the absence of light. This initial period of sleep, often referred to as first sleep, would last for about 3 to 4 hours. Then, without any alarm clock, without stress, the sleeper would naturally awaken in the middle of the night, not fully, not restlessly, just gently. A peaceful, quiet wakefulness. This midnight interval could last from 1 to 2 hours. People might meditate, pray, stoke the fire, or simply think. Some used the time to tell stories, to make love, or to reflect on their dreams. Then, as the fire burned low once again, they would drift into second sleep, a longer, often deeper phase that lasted until the early morning light. This two-part sleep structure wasn't exclusive to hunter-gatherers. It shows up across centuries of recorded history, in literature, diaries, legal documents, and medical texts from the Middle Ages all the way to the 18th century. The term first sleep appears in Chaucer, in Homer, even in records from 15th century France and England. People in those eras didn't think of this waking period as insomnia. It was expected. It was normal. There were even documented bedtime routines based around it, waking to brew tea, say a quiet prayer, or write by candlelight. Some historians suggest that this segmenting of sleep may have provided mental and emotional benefits. The midnight period allowed for calm reflection, creative thought, or deep spiritual practice, without interruption from the outside world. In a way, it was a gift, a moment when the body was still, but the mind was quietly alive. It's even possible that dream recall was stronger during this time. People would rise after their first sleep and remember what they had seen. Dreams were written down, discussed, interpreted. Then during the second sleep, the body dove deeper into richer, more consolidated rest. Some anthropologists believe this pattern is rooted in our biology, an adaptation to the natural rhythms of darkness and light. Before artificial lighting, the night wasn't a continuous black void. Moonlight, starlight, firelight all influenced sleep behavior. And temperature changes through the night may have played a role too. As the air cooled before midnight, the body began to sleep. But as the night warmed again, just slightly, the body naturally stirred. Segmented sleep also helped early humans balance rest with awareness. Waking in the middle of the night gave the group a chance to check surroundings, tend to the fire, or share short, meaningful moments with one another. It was a pause, not a disruption. And so, the idea that we must sleep in one unbroken block, 8 hours straight or nothing, is actually a modern invention. For most of our existence, humans slept in parts, two gentle phases separated by soft darkness and stillness. A cycle that echoed the rhythms of the moon, the stars, and the natural world around us. And maybe, just maybe, your body remembers that rhythm too. When you wake briefly at 2 a.m. and wonder why, perhaps it's not a problem. Perhaps it's ancient, a memory of how we used to sleep. Now imagine the place where early humans slept. Not a room, not a house, but a cave. Cold stone walls, uneven floors, a space carved by nature itself. These shelters were not chosen for comfort, but for survival. Caves offered a refuge, a rare barrier between human vulnerability and the wild outside. For early humans, this meant safety from predators, from storms, and from the unknown darkness of the open plains. A single cave mouth could serve as both home and fortress. Inside, the air was cool and still. Moisture hung gently in the air. The deeper you went, the darker it became, until you could no longer see your hand in front of your face. But darkness was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it was soothing. It signaled sleep, rest, quiet. On the other, it was the hiding place of predators, bears, hyenas, saber-tooths. For these reasons, fire became an essential part of early sleep. A fire at the mouth of the cave wasn't just for warmth. It was a barrier, a beacon, and a signal. Flames warned away animals. Smoke masked human scent. Light gave the illusion of constant watchfulness. For those sleeping inside, the flicker of fire offered comfort, a silent promise that someone was watching, and that rest was possible. Sleep positions were often strategic. The vulnerable, children, elders, slept farther in. The strong, the agile, the hunters, they slept near the entrance where they could hear, react, and defend. And though the ground was hard, beds were fashioned from natural materials: dried grass, moss, branches, animal hides. These primitive bedding choices weren't soft by today's standards, but they elevated the sleeper from the cold stone and added warmth and cushioning. In 2020, researchers uncovered 200,000-year-old evidence of early humans building bedding platforms using ash and aromatic plants, not only for comfort, but likely to repel insects and parasites. Even then, humans were thinking about how to make sleep safer. The cave itself shaped sleep. With no artificial lights and little access to the night sky, humans inside caves lived according to pure darkness. They slept when it was dark and woke when light returned, not just from the sun, but from the flickering warmth of their fire. Sleep was deeply connected to natural rhythms: the chill in the air, the position of the stars, the damp scent of stone. And just outside, the world remained alive. Owls gliding through moonlight, wolves pacing through tall grass, insects humming in the trees. These were the nighttime sounds that cradled sleep in ancient times. Not silence, but consistent sound: the rustle of leaves, the drip of water, the crack of fire. These sounds created a natural lullaby, a backdrop of normalcy. If those sounds stopped suddenly, if everything went quiet, that meant something was wrong. A predator, an intruder, a threat. Early humans slept lightly because they had to. Their survival depended on being attuned to the tiniest shift. A breath held, a stick broken, a wind pattern changed. And so their brains evolved not to ignore sound, but to interpret it, to rest while still listening. And this is something we've inherited. Even today, modern humans are more likely to wake in unfamiliar environments. The first night in a hotel, camping outdoors, one half of the brain literally stays more alert. This is called the first night effect. It's not anxiety, it's instinct, a safety mechanism passed down through generations of cave sleepers who learned that in the stillness of night, your best protection was each other, a fire, and the cave itself. Fire, one of the greatest inventions in human history. It gave us warmth, it gave us cooked food, but fire also gave us something just as important: control over the night. Before fire, darkness was total. When the sun disappeared, the world vanished with it. A deep blackness, pierced only by starlight or the pale glow of the moon. But with fire, humans created their own light, and with it, they began to shape when they slept and how. Fire wasn't just a light source, it was a signal to the brain. Its glow resembled the dim orange tones of dusk. These warm hues are low in blue light, which means they don't confuse the body's internal clock. In fact, firelight likely helped regulate the release of melatonin, the hormone that tells the body it's time to wind down. Even today, candlelight and campfires don't disrupt our sleep in the same way that modern screens do. Fire supported the natural rhythm of sleep rather than working against it. The light flickered. It wasn't constant. It moved like a heartbeat. And this rhythm, soft, irregular, alive, had a calming effect. People would gather around the fire in the evening hours, telling stories, sharing food, listening. The body, bathed in this soft glow, would begin to slow down. Breathing deepened, voices grew quieter, and one by one, people would drift off to sleep. Some curled close to the warmth, others remained near it, keeping watch. The fire was more than light. It was protection, a social center, a biological pacemaker. Its smell, its sound, its gentle warmth, all became part of the nightly experience, and it taught the brain when it was safe to let go. But there was more. As the fire burned, it created a subtle sleep cycle of its own. Fires needed tending. Someone always had to feed the flames, especially during cold nights or in predator-prone areas. This meant waking in shifts, creating a built-in system of staggered sleep. Not everyone asleep at once, but everyone getting some rest. Over time, this influenced how humans organized their sleep. It wasn't linear, it was shared, a fluid pattern that allowed for safety, connection, and deep rest. And while the fire influenced sleep schedules, it also soothed the senses, just like white noise machines today. The crackling of wood, the popping of resin, the soft hiss of embers created a constant, comforting soundscape. Even today, many people find it easier to fall asleep while listening to fire recordings. Why? Because those sounds are familiar to the deepest parts of our brains. They signal comfort, they signal safety. Fire meant someone was awake, someone was watching, and so your body could relax. In this way, fire became a biological sleep aid, used long before beds, blackout curtains, or bedtime routines. It shaped not just how we slept, but when we slept, and how deeply we could rest. And even now, in our rooms with dim lamps and soft nightlights, we are still chasing that same feeling, the glow of a nearby flame, the sense that it's okay to sleep, that someone or something is keeping watch through the night. Long before artificial light, before lanterns, torches, or glowing screens, there was only one light in the night sky, the moon, pale, glowing, ancient, a quiet guide in the darkness. For early humans, the moon was everything. Its phases dictated visibility, movement, mood, and yes, even sleep. When the moon was full, its light could be bright enough to cast shadows on the ground, illuminating forests, riverbeds, and cave mouths. People were more likely to be active during these times, walking, hunting, gathering water, even socializing. Full moons extended the day, shifting the natural sleep cycle by a few hours. On dark, moonless nights, however, the world became invisible, so humans adapted. When there was light, they moved. When there was darkness, they rested. Sleep was not dictated by hours, but by natural cues. These cycles, the waxing and waning of the moon, helped shape our sense of time long before calendars or clocks. And the moon didn't just affect visibility, it also seemed to influence mood and dreams. Across cultures, full moons were associated with restlessness, intense dreams, and vivid emotions. In modern studies, people report lower sleep quality and shorter sleep duration during full moons, even in windowless rooms. It's as if our bodies remember that something is brighter out there, that something is watching. But it wasn't just moonlight. Early humans were also guided by seasonal rhythms, the tilt of the earth, the changing length of days and nights. In winter, when the nights were longer, people likely slept more, resting deeper, waking later, slowing down with the cold. In summer, when sunlight stretched into the evening, humans were more active, walking farther, gathering more food, needing less sleep. These rhythms weren't wrong, they were adaptive. The body responded to nature's signals. The rise and fall of melatonin was controlled not by alarm clocks, but by the sky itself. The sun set, melatonin began to rise. The sun returned, it stopped. This is your circadian rhythm, an internal clock older than civilization. And for most of our history, it was finely tuned to natural light. The first light of dawn didn't just wake people physically. It shifted hormones, increased cortisol to energize the body. Just as sunset told us to rest, sunrise told us to rise. In this way, the entire sky, the moon, the stars, the path of the sun, became a kind of ancient bedtime story, a tale told over and over again. A rhythm your body still understands, even now when you feel sleepier on dark, rainy days, or more alert under bright moonlight. Your body is responding to the same cycles, patterns written into your biology thousands of years ago. So as you lie in bed tonight, perhaps glance at the window. Is the moon watching you sleep, or has it tucked behind the clouds? Either way, your body knows, and it listens to the light. To understand how our ancestors truly slept, sometimes we need to look not just backward in time, but outward, to the people still living close to nature today. The Hadza, a hunter-gatherer tribe in northern Tanzania, are often referred to as one of the last communities maintaining a lifestyle similar to that of our prehistoric ancestors. They live without electricity, without artificial light, without modern schedules, and because of that, they offer us a living window into ancient sleep. Researchers who studied the Hadza, as well as other tribes like the Cavemen of Bolivia and the San of Namibia, discovered something fascinating. Their sleep is natural, fluid, and communal. Hadza people don't have fixed bedtimes. They go to sleep after the sun sets, but not immediately. They sit by the fire, they talk, they watch the stars. Then one by one they lie down on mats made of woven grass or hide, under the open sky, or beneath simple shelters. Their sleep isn't perfectly continuous, and that's the key. It's light, interrupted, and shared. People wake up during the night, briefly. They may shift, get up to tend to a fire, check on a child, or simply sit for a while before lying down again. This pattern, once thought abnormal, is actually normal for them, and it mirrors the segmented sleep described in historical records across Europe and Asia. But perhaps most interesting of all, in these communities, someone is always awake. In a study published in Proceedings of the Royal Society B, researchers monitored the Hadza over 20 nights. What they found was astonishing. Across the group, there was never a moment when everyone was asleep at the same time. Even without planning it, the tribe naturally staggered their sleep in a kind of rolling pattern. About 40% of the group would be awake at any given time. And yet, no one seemed sleep-deprived. They didn't nap excessively during the day. They weren't sluggish. Their bodies had simply adapted to group vigilance, a trait almost certainly carried from our shared evolutionary past. This constant low-level awareness was like an invisible web of safety. When one person stirred, another remained still. When one dozed off, another was just returning from wakefulness. Like a flock of birds or a school of fish, they flowed together, not by command but by rhythm. And because they lived in close contact, sleeping side by side, they remained attuned to one another's sounds and movements, that light snoring, the rustle of feet, a cough in the night. All of these signaled presence, safety, familiarity. There's another key observation. Despite their exposure to insects, cold or hard sleeping surfaces, the Hadza rarely suffer from insomnia. Their minds are aligned with the sun and the stars, not with glowing screens or overpacked schedules. They sleep when they're tired, and they wake when it's time. This is circadian harmony, the delicate balance between the body and the earth. In observing them, we're not looking at people who are behind modernity. We are looking at something older than civilization, something embedded in our DNA. The Hadza remind us that sleep was never meant to be a solitary, rigid event. It was, and perhaps still should be, flexible, shared, and deeply human. In the world of early humans, time was not measured in hours, but in temperature, light, and energy. There were no schedules, no clocks, no rigid sense of bedtime or work hours. Instead, the body moved with the earth, and so did sleep. In many ancestral environments, particularly hot climates, daytime could be brutal. Scorching heat drained the body of energy. So during the hottest hours of the day, humans did something very natural. They rested, sometimes fully sleeping, sometimes just lying quietly in the shade. These midday rests or naps weren't lazy. They were strategic, an evolutionary way to preserve strength, avoid overheating, and prepare for the cooler hours ahead. Even today, in modern hunter-gatherer and pastoralist societies, short naps in the early afternoon are common. This pattern mirrors something deep in the human body, a natural dip in alertness around midday. You may have felt it yourself, that wave of sleepiness after lunch. It's not just the food, it's your body's ultradian rhythm. Shorter cycles within the day that tell you when to work and when to rest. In the Stone Age, this signal wasn't ignored, it was respected. People would nap under trees, in the corners of caves, with children resting beside them, elders sighing in the heat and the fire low. Then, as the day cooled, things would change. In many regions, evening brought relief, a break from the sun, a rise in energy. And so, the hours just after sunset became a time of activity. The temperature was bearable, the wind softer, and under the light of a waxing moon or a well-tended fire, people would gather, talk, cook, travel. Some tasks, like foraging, preparing food, or setting traps, may have taken place during this window. This wasn't late-night hustle. It was simply adaptive behavior, using the best parts of the day for the body. In desert regions especially, it was common to rest during the heat and move in the cool night. Even sleep itself reflected this flow. People might sleep for a few hours after dark, wake up for a period of quiet activity, then sleep again later, once the body had cooled and the world was still. This made sleep not a block, but a cycle, broken up across a 24-hour rhythm of light, heat, and need. And again, we see echoes of this in our modern lives. Afternoon drowsiness, second winds after 9 p.m. Even the rise of polyphasic sleep experiments today, where people divide their rest into multiple naps across the day, reflects ancient practices. What early humans seemed to know intuitively, we are now rediscovering through science. Sleep does not need to be confined. It can bend. It can stretch. It can align with how the earth moves and how our bodies respond. And perhaps most beautifully, sleep in the ancient world wasn't treated as a break from life, but as a part of it, a rhythm, a breath, a cycle of rest, woven into the day. As the fire dies down and the forest settles into silence, a different kind of awareness awakens. The deep brain, the ancient brain, the one evolved to survive in a world full of shadows and predators. For early humans, falling asleep never meant total disconnection. Even in slumber, the body listened. The ears were attuned to patterns, the wind rustling leaves, the slow drip of water from a cave wall, the crackle of embers beside the group. These were the sounds of safety, familiar, repeating, expected. But the brain was trained to react when that pattern changed. A sudden silence, a distant growl, a single footstep in the wrong place, and in response, the sleeper would stir, not fully waking but reaching a lighter phase of awareness. This is what some scientists refer to as sentinel behavior, a survival strategy built into our sleep. It's why many people today still wake more easily in new environments or find it hard to sleep soundly their first night in a hotel, a tent, or a friend's home. The first night effect, as researchers call it, is the modern echo of an ancient brain still on watch. And yet sleep wasn't shallow all the time. Even in the Stone Age, people entered phases of deep sleep, when the body repairs itself and the immune system strengthens. But perhaps most mysterious of all is that early humans almost certainly experienced REM sleep, the stage of vivid dreams, emotional processing, and memory consolidation. REM, or rapid eye movement sleep, comes in cycles. It appears in small amounts at first, then grows deeper and longer toward the morning hours. In REM sleep, the brain is highly active, almost as if awake, and yet the body is completely still. Muscles are temporarily paralyzed. The body is locked in place as the mind begins to wander. For early humans, REM sleep may have served many functions, helping process emotions from daily encounters, rehearsing social dynamics and relationships, practicing fight or flight responses through dream scenarios. In dreams, they could relive a hunt, or run from a predator, or reunite with a loved one. Dreams may have helped early humans prepare for threats and heal from trauma. Some even speculate that REM sleep supported the development of language and creativity, allowing humans to simulate experiences and build internal stories long before the written word. And just as sleep was shared, so were dreams. Waking in the middle of the night, people may have whispered what they'd seen. The cave glowing with embers, faces lit in orange, as stories passed from one dreamer to another. In this way, sleep wasn't just about the body, but the community, a nightly ritual of sound, memory, and trust. Surrounded by the wild, the human brain found ways to rest while still watching, and inside that balance, between silence and sound, stillness and motion, fear and comfort, sleep became more than a break from waking. It became a world of its own, a secret place where safety, survival, and story began to intertwine. As we leave the forests and caves of the Stone Age behind, we enter a world of stone temples, rituals, and mystery. Ancient Egypt, a land of pyramids, gods, and golden tombs, was also a land of dreams. To the Egyptians, dreams weren't random. They weren't meaningless. Dreams were messages, sacred transmissions from the gods delivered through sleep. The Egyptian word for dream, resat, often appears in texts next to gods like Thoth and Horus. People believed that during sleep, the soul could leave the body, travel into another realm, and receive divine instruction. This wasn't superstition. It was spiritual practice. In fact, entire temples were built for dreaming. These were known as sleep temples, sacred sites where people would go not to worship with words, but to sleep and listen. The most famous practice was called incubation. A seeker, often someone suffering from illness or confusion, would be purified through rituals, bathed, anointed with oils, given sacred herbs. Then they would be led into a quiet, dark chamber, the sleep room. There they would rest for the night, hoping to receive a healing dream. Dreams in these temples were considered oracles, and priests acted as interpreters. In the morning, the dreamer would speak aloud what they'd seen, and the priest would help decode the message. It might be a vision of a god, a symbolic object, or a journey through unfamiliar landscapes. Each image was thought to hold meaning, connected to the dreamer's condition or fate. Even pharaohs practiced dream incubation. Important political decisions, like when to wage war or where to build a temple, were sometimes influenced by what the ruler dreamed. Sleep then was not private. It was public, ritualized, and deeply respected. People believed that in sleep, the boundaries between worlds became thinner, that the gods could whisper through the veil or send images through the stars. Some temples even had special architecture designed to aid dreaming. Certain chambers were shaped to amplify silence or to funnel moonlight across the floor. Herbs like blue lotus were burned or steeped in teas, not to sedate the sleeper, but to enhance visions. This was sleep with purpose, sleep as a bridge between the earthly and the eternal. And though modern science has replaced these rituals with neurology and lab reports, the sense that dreams carry messages hasn't disappeared. Even now, many people wake with fragments of something larger, a symbol, a voice, a place they've never been, and deep inside we wonder, was it just a dream, or was it something more? In the heart of ancient Greece, nestled among sacred groves and marble columns, stood temples not built for sacrifice or song, but for sleep. These were the Asclepians, ancient healing centers dedicated to Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine. Here, sleep was not rest, it was treatment. Pilgrims came from far and wide, the sick, the desperate, the spiritually wounded. They came not for potions or incantations, but for a night's sleep under sacred guidance. The process began with ritual cleansing. Bathing in spring water, fasting, meditation, the mind and body had to be quiet, prepared, open. Then came the central rite, incubation or enkoimesis, the act of sleeping within the temple. Inside a special chamber, cool, quiet, dimly lit, the patient would lie down on a stone slab or woven mat. Some rooms were underground, others were built near thermal springs. Often snakes, sacred to Asclepius, roamed the chambers freely. Their presence was symbolic. They represented transformation, rebirth, healing. That night the patient would sleep, and it was hoped dream. In those dreams, Asclepius might appear. Sometimes he touched the afflicted part of the body. Sometimes he whispered cures. Sometimes his very image was considered enough to spark recovery. When the patient awoke, they would describe the dream to temple priests, trained in both theology and medicine. These priests were early interpreters of the subconscious. They would listen, reflect, and prescribe actions based on the dream. Herbal remedies, exercises, prayers, or simply the belief that healing had begun, and in many cases, people got better, not necessarily from divine intervention, but from the power of suggestion, the ritual of care, and the deep restoration that true sleep brings. The Asclepians were often located in areas of natural beauty, hillsides, near water, surrounded by calm. This setting wasn't accidental. The environment itself was part of the healing. The soft sounds, the clean air, the sense of sacred space, it all prepared the mind to rest and to listen inward. Some historians believe these sleep temples were the first psychotherapies, a place where body, mind, and dream were all considered one, and where people learned to trust their inner visions. Over time, the tradition of dream incubation spread across the Mediterranean. Even into early Christianity, echoes of this practice remained. Saints appeared in sleep. Angels delivered messages in dreams. But it all began here, in the still chambers of the Asclepians, where sleep wasn't an escape from life, but a journey into healing, a sacred dialogue between the human soul and the divine. As we travel from Greece into Rome, we enter a world of order, luxury, and discipline, a civilization that mastered the art of architecture, law, and empire, and yet the Romans also held a deep respect for rest. For them, sleep was not just biological, it was cultural. In many Roman homes, especially among the wealthy, the sleeping space had evolved into something personal and private. The cubiculum, the Roman bedroom, was a small, often windowless chamber designed for sleep, intimacy, and retreat. It was tucked away from the noise of the atrium and courtyards, a space where the mind could relax. The Romans believed that sleep should be quiet, restful, and undisturbed, not because of science, but because of dignity. To sleep well was a mark of balance and status. But Roman sleep culture wasn't limited to the night. One of their most enduring traditions was the midday nap, known as meridiatio. This short period of rest, typically taken after the midday meal, was practiced by laborers and aristocrats alike. Even Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, praised the value of a brief nap to sharpen the mind. In the hot Mediterranean climate, the hours between noon and 3 p.m. were often slow and quiet, not suitable for intense work or thought. So Romans rested. They closed the shutters, reclined on couches, drifted off in the afternoon hush. This wasn't laziness, it was wisdom, a natural response to the body's rhythm. Meridiatio was so common that some Roman streets were nearly deserted during this time. public buildings emptied. Conversations ceased. Even courts paused. Everyone understood. This was a sacred window of calm. And though not as ceremonial as the Asclepions of Greece, the Romans still believed that dreams could hold value. Philosophers like Cicero and Macrobius wrote about dream interpretation, not as divine prophecy, but as insight into character, emotion, and moral clarity. The Stoics, in particular, viewed sleep as a time for mental renewal. They believed that just as the body rests, the soul too prepares itself, reflecting on the day, reviewing choices, and restoring reason. In this way, sleep became a spiritual rehearsal, a quiet practice of inner discipline, and the midday nap, that was a gift, a chance to reset, to step away from duty, and to breathe. The Roman embrace of rest and retreat still echoes in many Mediterranean cultures today, where the siesta lives on, where businesses close in the afternoon, and where the rhythm of life still bows briefly to the body's need to pause. So while Rome may be remembered for its military legions and marble halls, it also offers us a softer legacy. The reminder that rest, even in the middle of the day, is not weakness, but wisdom woven into time. In the time before brain scans, before REM cycles and hormones, sleep was a mystery, a disappearance. One moment, the person was present, awake, alert. The next, gone. Eyes closed, body still, the mind elsewhere. To ancient thinkers, sleep demanded explanation. And in the absence of science, they turned to philosophy, spirituality, and symbolism. Among the earliest and most enduring theories was that of the four humours, a model proposed by Hippocrates and expanded by Galen. They believed the human body was governed by four essential fluids: blood phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Sleep, they claimed, was caused by an accumulation of phlegm in the brain, a cooling agent that quieted consciousness. Dreams occurred when vapors from digestion rose upward, stirring images in the brain as the body remained still. In this way, diet became a part of sleep theory. Certain foods were said to promote rest, others to disturb it. Heavy meals before bed were believed to cause nightmares. Spices were thought to provoke vivid dreams. Physicians prescribed herbs, teas, and even bloodletting, not to sedate, but to rebalance the inner world. But not all explanations were physical. For many cultures, sleep was a spiritual departure, a journey of the soul. In both ancient Egyptian and early Greek traditions, it was believed that during sleep, the soul could leave the body. It might ascend to divine realms, visit ancestors, even glimpse future events. In these views, dreams weren't just shadows of memory, but soul-encoded experiences, proof that a part of us could move beyond the physical. Some even believed that death and sleep were siblings, connected states separated only by breath. In Greek mythology, Thanatos, the god of death, and Hypnos, the god of sleep, were twin brothers. One led you into silence forever, the other just for the night. And so, to sleep was not just to rest, but to risk departure. To close your eyes was to step into the unknown, a silent trust in return. In the East, similar ideas took root. In Vedic and early Hindu traditions, sleep was linked to layers of consciousness: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and pure awareness. Yogic texts taught that the self could observe sleep from a distance, aware even as the body rested. In Taoist thought, too, the dream world was a mirror of the Tao, where symbols, spirits, and inner truths could appear. What all of these views shared was reverence. Sleep wasn't just a passive lapse, it was meaningful. It had depth. It told you things you couldn't hear during the day, whether through bodily fluids or spirit travel. Ancient cultures treated sleep as something worthy of attention and care. They didn't try to conquer it. They tried to understand it. And while their explanations may seem strange to us now, the curiosity they held That deep human wonder about what happens when we close our eyes is still alive in all of us. Each night, we disappear into the same mystery they tried to name and awaken, just as they did, still wondering. As we leave the temples and philosophies of the ancient world, we enter the Middle Ages, a time of candles and parchment, hearths and shadows. And here, we find something curious, a very different approach to sleep. In medieval Europe, people didn't expect to sleep all through the night. In fact, it was normal to wake up in the middle of the night, not because of anxiety or noise, but as part of a natural rhythm. This was the era of segmented sleep, often called first sleep and second sleep. People would go to bed shortly after nightfall, perhaps around 8 or 9 p.m. They'd sleep for a few hours, then wake up naturally, often sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. This interlude between sleeps was expected. It wasn't restlessness, it wasn't insomnia. It was a time for quiet thought, soft tasks, and gentle presence. In one 15th century diary, a woman writes about praying during the watch between sleeps. In another, a farmer mentions checking on animals before returning to bed. There are accounts of people writing letters, weaving, even visiting neighbors. Some lit a candle, others sat by the fire. It was a pocket of peace when the world was dark and the self felt clear. Second sleep would come later, another 3 to 4 hours of rest, sometimes deeper and more dream-filled than the first. This biphasic pattern wasn't seen as unusual. It was standard, reflected in medical texts, poetry, and even legal records. In fact, the phrase first sleep appears regularly in historical documents. In the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer references first sleep casually, as if every reader would know what he meant. And they would have. The artificial 8-hour sleep we chase today is modern. Medieval people weren't ruled by clocks. They followed the rhythm of the sun, the seasons, and their own bodies. Night wasn't one block of unconsciousness. It was a landscape with a midpoint, a pause, a space. Some historians suggest that this waking period allowed for memory processing or spiritual insight. Others believe it made space for communal connection, as families or villagers might talk in hushed voices, share stories, or tend to small duties. There are even references to people making love between first and second sleep, considered a good time when the mind was calm and the world was still. In this way, sleep wasn't seen as a retreat, but a cycle, a process with room for both rest and reflection. So if you've ever found yourself waking in the middle of the night, sitting quietly in the dark, wondering why, you're not broken. You're simply remembering something ancient, a rhythm that once guided the nights of kings and peasants alike, in candlelight, silence, and sleep. Imagine the night has deepened, the fire has burned low, and the world outside is cloaked in stillness. You stir gently, not startled, not afraid, just awake. It's sometime after midnight, a quiet hour known not for action, but for presence. In medieval times, this moment between first sleep and second sleep was not seen as an inconvenience, but as a gift, a small island of wakefulness in a sea of dreams. What did people do during this time? They didn't rush back to bed, they embraced the pause. For many, it became a time of prayer. The world was still, the soul was quiet. Alone with candlelight and silence, a person might kneel by their bedside, whispering ancient words to God. These were the vigils, hours set aside by monks, mystics, and even lay people for spiritual reflection. In monasteries, entire communities structured their sleep around it. The divine office, a cycle of nighttime prayers, often called monks to rise around 2 a.m. They gathered in stone halls, chanting psalms under flickering torchlight, wrapped in wool and silence. For others, the night offered a moment of meditation, to sit by the fire, eyes soft, reflecting on the day. There were no to-do lists, No devices, just thought, drifting like smoke. Some chose to write, letters, reflections, dreams. Journals from the 14th and 15th centuries show entries marked "between sleeps," often filled with poetic thoughts or observations on the moonlight. The pen moved slowly, in rhythm with the hour, and still others turned to their partners. It's in this sacred pause that many couples shared moments of intimacy. Physicians of the time even suggested that this interval, not too tired, not too restless, was ideal for physical closeness. It was a time of lowered inhibition, softened thought, and shared warmth. In the dark stillness, affection deepened. For families, the midnight hour could also be practical. A parent might check on a child, add logs to the fire, tend to animals in nearby barns, all quietly, gently, and with care. The darkness didn't create fear, it created intimacy, a closeness to the body, the mind, the soul. And so this midnight waking was more than a pause in rest. It was a return to self, a rare moment where nothing was demanded, except stillness. And after an hour or two, the body would drift again into second sleep, often deeper, richer, and dream-filled. So tonight, if you find yourself awake at 2 a.m., don't be alarmed. Light a candle, sit quietly. You are walking a path trodden by centuries, a gentle rhythm that once shaped the night for monks, mothers, farmers, and kings. In the medieval world, night was a place of shadows, but not of darkness alone. Within homes, monasteries, and cottages there was light, soft, golden, flickering light, not from bulbs or wires, but from candles and hearths. These small flames shaped how people moved, how they read, how they prayed, and how they slept. A single candle could define the boundary of a room. Its glow was warm but narrow. It didn't erase the dark, it danced with it. And in that delicate balance, the human body found peace. Unlike today's electric lights, candlelight doesn't disrupt melatonin production. It doesn't confuse the brain into thinking it's still daytime. Instead, it supports the body's natural transition into sleep, triggering the release of sleep hormones, slowing heart rate, and inviting stillness. In many homes, the last hour before bed was spent in this gentle glow. Families gathered near the fire. A mother might mend clothes, a father sharpened tools. Children sat cross-legged listening to stories. The hearth wasn't just for warmth, it was a ritual space. Its rhythms, the soft pop of embers, the shifting orange light, told the body, you are safe, you are home, you can rest now. And in colder months, the hearth never went out. Someone always kept watch, feeding it through the night. In monasteries, this role might fall to a novice monk. In households, it might be the elder or the parent of a newborn. These glowing embers served another purpose too, timekeeping. Without clocks, people watched the fire. As the flames dimmed, it signaled the hour was growing late. And so the fire became a kind of sleep guide, a natural dimmer, helping people move gently into darkness. Candles were precious. Made from tallow or beeswax, they were used sparingly. Only the wealthiest could afford to light many at once. For most people, one candle lit the room. Its single flame became the center of attention, every movement, every breath shaped by its gentle light. This created a kind of focus that's rare today. In that small pool of gold, the mind softened, the body slowed. There were no glaring screens, no overhead fluorescence, just the soft glow and the shadows it painted on stone or wood. That contrast between light and dark prepared the mind for dreaming. And when the candle was blown out, silence, sleep. So while modern lighting has extended our nights, brightened our homes, and brought convenience, it has also disconnected us from the natural cues our ancestors relied upon. Perhaps this is why so many of us feel wired at bedtime. Our lights shout daytime, even when the stars have long since risen. But the body remembers. It remembers how to respond to firelight, to candles, to shadows that welcome sleep. And every time you dim the lights before bed, every time you light a single flame, you're stepping into an old sacred rhythm, the rhythm of the night that once lulled entire villages to sleep. When you think of a bed, you might imagine a private retreat, soft sheets, silence, solitude. But in the medieval world, sleep was anything but solitary. For most people, especially the poor and working class, sleeping was a communal experience. Families lived in one-room homes. The hearth was at the center, and around it everyone gathered to eat, work, and sleep. At night, mats or straw pallets were unrolled. Parents, children, sometimes even neighbors or guests would sleep side by side, sharing warmth and space. In winter, it was common for several bodies to huddle together, not for comfort, but for survival. Heating was minimal, if it existed at all. The shared body heat could make the difference between a restless night and a frozen one. In larger households, servants might sleep at the foot of the master's bed. Apprentices in a shop might share floor space with one another. And travelers often slept in taverns or inns, where a bed wasn't a private booking, but a shared resource. Two or more strangers might share the same mattress, separated only by a thin blanket, or not at all. There are letters and records of people complaining about noisy sleepmates, bad smells, even snoring, and yet it was accepted. Sleep was not a personal space, but a public function. Only the wealthiest had separate chambers, and even then true privacy was rare. A nobleman might have his own carved wooden bed, but it was common for attendants, guards, or servants to be sleeping nearby. Royal beds were often massive, not just for status, but because they were shared. Diplomats, guests, or family members might be invited to sleep beside the king or queen. In fact, sharing a bed was often seen as a sign of trust, alliance, or honor. In a world where security and warmth were scarce, bed sharing was logical, even intimate, but not necessarily romantic. The design of the bed itself also reflected social status. A poor household might use a straw mat or a pile of hay covered in cloth. Middle-class homes had rope-strung frames with wool-stuffed mattresses, and the elite, they slept in canopied beds draped with heavy curtains, not just for decoration, but for warmth and privacy. These bed curtains helped trap heat and muffle the noises of a busy household or hall. Even in castles, walls were thin. A bed with curtains was a room within a room, a small, warm world of its own. And still, the night was rarely silent. You heard breathing, coughing, the shifting of others turning in sleep. For many, this soundscape wasn't disturbing, it was reassuring. The presence of others meant safety. Sleep wasn't just something you did alone. It was something you did with your people. Only in more recent centuries have we come to associate sleep with complete privacy. We build walls, close doors, soundproof our rooms. But the medieval sleeper lived in a world of shared rest, where beds held bodies and relationships together, where warmth was passed from person to person, and where the quiet rhythm of a group at rest was part of what made sleep possible. In the medieval world, time was not marked by clocks or alarms, but by the seasons, the tilt of the earth, the softness of daylight, the long, dark stretches of winter. These rhythms dictated how people lived and how they slept. During the colder months, when the sun set early and rose late, nights stretched on for 12 to 14 hours in parts of Europe. And in response, people adjusted. They slept longer. Not in one unbroken block, but in extended patterns of segmented sleep, with waking periods in between. In summer, with short nights and long days, people needed less rest, often sleeping 6 to 7 hours, then rising early to tend fields or animals. But in winter, the body slowed. Days were colder, movement was harder, and so the human schedule softened. In some rural communities, people might go to bed shortly after the sunset, around 5 or 6 p.m. They'd sleep for a few hours, wake around midnight for a time of reflection or quiet tasks. then drift into second sleep that carried them through until 7 or 8 in the morning. Altogether, they might spend 9 to 10 hours in bed, not always asleep, but always at rest. This natural variation wasn't seen as a problem. It was simply how life flowed. The cold kept people indoors, fields lay dormant, so people allowed their bodies to take what they needed. In medieval monasteries, even rigid prayer schedules were adjusted in winter months to allow more time for sleep. The divine hours, or horae canonici, shifted slightly with the seasons, so monks could find more warmth and renewal in the long night. There was wisdom in this, an understanding that the body is not a machine, but part of nature itself. And just like trees go bare and rivers freeze, the body too enters a season of quiet. With limited daylight and fewer tasks to rush toward, evenings became more gentle. People read, told stories, repaired clothes by firelight. And when the dark fell fully, they rested, slowly, completely. In that rest, the body could rebuild, heal, prepare for spring. This cycle, longer sleep in winter, shorter in summer, is still present in our biology. Even today, many people feel sleepier in the colder months, more prone to nap, more drawn to blankets and silence. It's not laziness, it's ancient memory, a rhythm we once honored, now often ignored. Our ancestors didn't fight the seasons, they flowed with them, and in that flow they found balance between waking and sleeping, between doing and being. So if you find yourself yawning earlier in winter, if the dark feels heavier and the warmth of bed more inviting, know this: you are not alone. You are remembering a time when the long night was not something to endure, but something to embrace. In the medieval world, time was not marked by clocks or alarms, but by the seasons, the tilt of the earth, the softness of daylight, the long dark stretches of winter. These rhythms dictated how people lived and how they slept. During the colder months, when the sun set early and rose late, nights stretched on for 12 to 14 hours in parts of Europe. And in response, people adjusted. They slept longer. Not in one unbroken block, but in extended patterns of segmented sleep, with waking periods in between. In summer, with short nights and long days, people needed less rest, often sleeping 6 to 7 hours, then rising early to tend fields or animals. But in winter, the body slowed. Days were colder, movement was harder, and so the human schedule softened. In some rural communities, people might go to bed shortly after the sunset, around 5 or 6 p.m. They'd sleep for a few hours, wake around midnight for a time of reflection or quiet tasks, then drift into second sleep that carried them through until 7 or 8 in the morning. Altogether, they might spend 9 to 10 hours in bed, not always asleep, but always at rest. This natural variation wasn't seen as a problem. It was simply how life flowed. The cold kept people indoors, fields lay dormant, so people allowed their bodies to take what they needed. In medieval monasteries, even rigid prayer schedules were adjusted in winter months to allow more time for sleep. The divine hours, or horae canonici, shifted slightly with the seasons, so monks could find more warmth and renewal in the long night. There was wisdom in this, an understanding that the body is not a machine, but part of nature itself. And just like trees go bare and rivers freeze, the body too enters a season of quiet. With limited daylight and fewer tasks to rush toward, evenings became more gentle. People read, told stories, repaired clothes by firelight. And when the dark fell fully, they rested, slowly, completely. In that rest, the body could rebuild, heal, prepare for spring. This cycle, longer sleep in winter, shorter in summer, is still present in our biology. Even today, many people feel sleepier in the colder months, more prone to nap, more drawn to blankets and silence. It's not laziness, it's ancient memory, a rhythm we once honored, now often ignored. Our ancestors didn't fight the seasons, they flowed with them, and in that flow they found balance between waking and sleeping, between doing and being. So if you find yourself yawning earlier in winter, If the dark feels heavier and the warmth of bed more inviting, know this: you are not alone. You are remembering a time when the long night was not something to endure, but something to embrace. For much of human history, sleep was flexible. The body followed nature's cues, the seasons dictated the rhythm, but even in the quiet, candlelit world of medieval Europe, not everyone found sleep easily. Insomnia, the restless mind, the turning body, the long night, has always existed. And in these early centuries, people began to name it. Medieval physicians described agrypnia, sleeplessness that could last hours, even days. Some blamed it on imbalances in the four humors, too much heat in the blood, too much moisture in the brain. Others believed it came from emotional disturbances, grief, worry, unconfessed guilt. Religious texts warned that anxiety, envy, and unresolved sin could stir the mind into wakefulness. Sleeplessness was often seen not just as a physical problem, but a spiritual one, a sign that the soul was uneasy. Remedies reflected this view. Physicians prescribed calming herbs, chamomile, valerian, lavender. They offered warm milk with honey, cool baths, or quiet prayer before bed. In some cases, amulets or charms were worn to ward off evil spirits, believed to cause disturbed sleep. And yet, many also saw insomnia as a normal part of life, a temporary imbalance, not a permanent disorder. Medieval writers recognized that grief, heartbreak, and poverty could all bring restless nights. But they also offered compassion, suggesting patience, time, and care rather than panic. In monasteries, monks sometimes experienced sleeplessness not as suffering, but as an opportunity for extended prayer and contemplation. Wakefulness at night could even be viewed as a gift, a moment to connect with God in the silence when distractions were gone. Still, for some, insomnia became a chronic burden. Medieval letters describe men who wandered the halls at night, too restless to lie down. Women who sat quietly, staring at the fire for hours, waiting for sleep that would not come. Physicians warned that prolonged wakefulness could bring melancholy, digestive troubles, and weakened immunity, and they were not entirely wrong. Even without modern science, people recognized that deep, regular sleep was essential for health and peace of mind. What they lacked in biology, they made up for in observation. In one 13th century medical text, a physician writes, "Sleep, when rightly taken, cools the blood, settles the mind, and strengthens the sinews. But when sleep failed to come, fear itself could worsen the problem, just as it does today. The anxiety of being awake fuels more wakefulness. And so the sleepless lay there, caught between exhaustion and worry, listening to the quiet tick of time, hoping for the return of rest. In this way, even centuries ago, people lived with the same silent battles many still face today. The long night, the restless mind, the waiting for sleep. In the medieval mind, night was not just darkness. It was a realm of mystery, of spirits, and of hidden forces. While sleep offered comfort, it also opened the door to the unknown. For many, the world of dreams and the world of spirits were not far apart. Stories of night creatures filled the imagination, spirits who wandered the earth after death, demons who crept through keyholes, witches who rode through the skies on moonlit nights, and creatures who visited the sleeper as they lay vulnerable in bed. One of the most feared was the nightmare. The word itself comes from the Old English mare, a kind of evil spirit or goblin believed to sit upon a person's chest while they slept, pressing the breath from their body, causing terror and paralysis. Today, we call it sleep paralysis, a strange and frightening state where the mind wakes before the body, leaving the person unable to move, sometimes accompanied by visions of shadowy figures. But to medieval people, it was evidence of a supernatural attack. Charms and amulets were used to guard against these forces. A sprig of rosemary under the pillow, a cross carved into the bed frame, prayers whispered before sleep. In some regions, incubi and succubi were feared, demonic beings who visited at night, seducing or tormenting sleepers. These tales reflected deep fears of vulnerability, the helpless state of the body during sleep, the openness of the soul to outside forces. But not all superstitions were terrifying. Many believed that dreams carried messages, visions of the future, warnings of illness, or glimpses of lost loved ones. A dream of clear water might promise good fortune. A falling tooth could foretell a death. A journey across water could mean change ahead. Books known as dream manuals circulated among the literate, offering interpretations for common images and symbols. Even kings and clergy consulted these guides, seeking hidden meaning in their night visions. In this way, sleep was not simply a break from life, it was a conversation with the invisible world. The moon was also wrapped in superstition. Full moons were said to stir madness, provoke strange dreams, and even summon creatures of the night. The word lunatic itself comes from luna, the moon, a reflection of how deeply the moon's cycles were believed to influence the human mind. Many people avoided travel at night, fearing not only wild animals, but the presence of wandering souls. Roads were often empty after dark. Doors were barred. Candles placed in windows served as a protective light, warding off evil. And yet for all these fears, night was also a time of wonder. Stars glittered overhead. The world fell silent. Storytellers spun tales of heroes visited by angels in their dreams. Lovers whispered beneath moonlight. Children fell asleep to tales of magical creatures who lived just beyond sight. The night was a borderland between danger and safety, fear and comfort, the known and the mysterious. And sleep was the boat that carried people across it, night after night, guided by flame, faith, and the fragile stillness of dreams. As we step into the Industrial Revolution, the world changes in ways no one has seen before. And for the first time in human history, time itself becomes mechanical. Before this era, people followed nature's rhythm. The sun rose, the birds sang, the fire dimmed. But now, a new rhythm ticked loudly in homes, factories, and cities, the sound of the clock. Mechanical clocks had existed in some form since the Middle Ages, often in monasteries and public squares. But by the 18th and 19th centuries, clocks became smaller, cheaper, and more widely available. Every home could have one. Every town square had its tall clock tower, chiming the hours, not for beauty alone, but for order. The industrial world required synchronization. Trains ran on fixed schedules. Factories demanded precise shifts. Workers were expected to rise and arrive at exact hours, not when the body was ready, but when the clock demanded. Sleep, once flexible and seasonal, was now boxed into strict segments. People were told when to wake, when to eat, when to work, when to rest. The clock ruled all. Before artificial lighting, humans rose and slept with the sun. Now a worker might rise at 4 a.m. in the dark, dressed by candlelight, and walk through foggy streets to the mill or factory. The body's natural rhythm was ignored, overridden by machines and wages. Sleep began to shrink. People who once enjoyed long winter nights now squeezed their rest into shorter, fragmented hours. Even on farms, where families previously followed natural daylight, the pressure to produce for growing cities forced tighter schedules and longer workdays. For many, sleep became something to steal, an afterthought between shifts. And with this new rigid structure came new anxieties. The pressure to fall asleep quickly, the fear of oversleeping, the obsession with getting enough rest on command. Sleep was no longer part of nature. It was now part of the economy. And yet this was only the beginning. Soon light itself would shift, and with it the very definition of night. As the Industrial Revolution accelerated, time grew tighter, faster, and more controlled. Entire societies began to operate like the machines they built. And at the center of this transformation was the rise of the 8-hour workday. It didn't happen all at once. In the early factories of the 18th and 19th centuries, shifts were often brutal, 10, 12, sometimes even 16 hours long. Men, women, and children labored from before sunrise until after sunset. Sleep shrank, exhaustion grew, and for many, rest was a stolen privilege, snatched between shifts in cramped apartments or crowded boarding houses. The body's natural cycles were pushed aside by the demands of profit and production, but as industrial societies advanced, labor movements began to rise. Workers demanded fairness, balance, and one slogan echoed through the streets: 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. The 8-hour workday slowly took hold. Laws were passed, factory owners adjusted, and with this shift, a new sleep pattern emerged. One long continuous block of sleep from roughly 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The natural segmented sleep of earlier centuries was gradually replaced by monophasic sleep, a full night's rest without waking in the middle. This new model fit the schedule of the modern world: wake early, work all day, sleep deeply at night, and for many it seemed efficient. But something subtle was lost. That quiet interlude between first and second sleep, the time for reflection, prayer, or intimacy, faded from daily life. The clock, not the body, now determined when people should rest. Cities grew brighter, work grew louder. And though the 8-hour system brought relief to many, it also marked a profound shift. Sleep was no longer a conversation with nature. It was an appointment, a slot on the schedule. Even as early as the 19th century, doctors began noticing new complaints. People struggled to fall asleep quickly. They worried about waking at the wrong time. They felt guilty if they couldn't maintain their assigned hours of rest. This anxiety, the pressure to sleep on demand, would grow even more intense in the electric age that followed. For now, though, society settled into its new rhythm. Work, sleep, repeat. The natural poetry of ancient nights, with their drifting segments and sacred pauses, had been rewritten into a clean, efficient block, designed not by the stars, but by the clock. As cities grew larger and industries expanded, something revolutionary illuminated the streets: artificial light. At first, it was gas lighting that transformed the night. Streets once wrapped in darkness now glowed with flickering lamps. Shopkeepers kept their doors open longer. Taverns filled late into the evening. Workers returned home under a dome of warm yellow light. For the first time, night was no longer strictly night. The line between day and darkness blurred. Gas lamps spread quickly across Europe and America in the early 19th century, creating bustling nighttime economies. The rhythm of sleep began to shift again. Where once families retired soon after sunset, many now stayed awake longer, reading, socializing, or working into the late hours. Light extended life, but it also shortened sleep. People delayed bedtime by hours, while wake-up times remained rigid due to work schedules. And soon, gas lighting was eclipsed by an even brighter force: electric light. With Thomas Edison's invention of the electric light bulb in the late 19th century, the conquest of night accelerated. Electric lighting was steadier, brighter, and safer than gas. No more open flames, no more smoky air. Light spread into every home, office, and factory. Evening hours were no longer limited. The glow of electric bulbs invited people to read longer, dine later, and work through what was once sacred sleeping time. City streets glowed like artificial daylight, and with this newfound brightness, humanity began to lose something ancient: the rhythm of darkness. Our biology was never designed for endless light. The pineal gland, deep inside the brain, responds to darkness by producing melatonin, the hormone that tells the body it's time to sleep. But artificial light, especially electric light, suppresses melatonin, confusing the internal clock. The body, tricked by constant illumination, delays its preparation for rest. Fatigue builds. Sleep becomes lighter, shorter, and often more restless. And though few recognized it at the time, this shift was profound. No longer tied to sunrise and sunset, people began crafting entirely new schedules. Some stayed awake well past midnight, waking early for work only to feel the creeping exhaustion we now call sleep deprivation. The 24-hour city was born, where the lights never dimmed, and sleep began to compete with entertainment, work, and social life. It seemed like progress, but quietly, the body struggled to adjust, and a new, silent epidemic was beginning, one that would soon spread across the modern world: chronic sleep loss. As the world grew brighter, it also grew busier, not just by day, but by night. Factories no longer stopped when the sun set. With electric lights blazing overhead, work could continue around the clock. And so, the rise of the night shift was born. For thousands of workers, nighttime was no longer a time for rest, but for labor. In mills, textile plants, railroads, and ports, entire teams worked through the dark hours, keeping machines running, trains moving, and cities growing. Sleep became something to fit in whenever possible, during daylight hours, squeezed between shifts, often in noisy, bright, or crowded conditions. The body struggled. Our internal clocks, designed for light by day and rest by night, rebelled against this new reality. Circadian rhythm disruption became common, though the term didn't yet exist. Night shift workers reported fatigue, digestive issues, mood swings, and declining health. The world was asking people to override millions of years of biology, and it came at a cost. Even for daytime workers, sleep was shrinking. Long commutes, evening shifts, and urban distractions left little time for rest. Entertainment options expanded: music halls, theaters, late-night cafes, all calling people away from their beds. The invention of the telegraph, then the telephone, brought messages at all hours, keeping minds alert and wired. The industrial city pulsed with life, but beneath its surface, a quiet exhaustion was spreading. Doctors began noticing a rise in complaints of nervous fatigue. Terms like neurasthenia appeared in medical texts, describing a sense of chronic tiredness, poor concentration, and unrefreshing sleep. Physicians urged patients to rest more, but few could afford to. Work demanded productivity. Cities never stopped. And for the first time in history, sleep deprivation became not just an individual problem, but a widespread cultural shift. Quietly, dangerously, sleeplessness became a normal part of modern life. It was not yet called an epidemic, but the seeds were planted. As machines powered through the night, human bodies fell out of sync, caught in a world that no longer respected the natural rhythm of light and dark. The cities of the Industrial Revolution were alive with sound. But for those seeking sleep, that sound was not always welcome. As populations swelled, urban life grew dense and restless. Streets once quiet after sunset now echoed with movement late into the night. Horse-drawn carriages rattled across cobblestones. Factory whistles shrieked at shift changes. Street vendors shouted their wares under gas lamps. Music spilled from taverns, dance halls, and theaters, and everywhere voices rose. Workers returning home, lovers meeting under moonlight, arguments drifting from windows left open for air. For city dwellers, night was no longer a time of stillness. Even inside small apartments or boarding houses, thin walls offered little protection. Footsteps above, children crying next door, doors slamming below. The intimate hush of medieval nights, filled with only wind and fire, was fading. Instead, sleep was now surrounded by the constant hum of modern life. The invention of the steam engine added to this soundscape. Trains roared through cities and countrysides, their whistles piercing the quiet, their wheels grinding steel tracks through neighborhoods that never slept. In wealthier districts, heavy drapes, thick stone walls, and inner courtyards provided some relief. But for the poor, packed into crowded tenements, stacked along narrow streets, Escape from the noise was nearly impossible. Doctors of the era began warning about the dangers of urban noise. They noted its effects on nervous exhaustion, poor sleep, irritability, and illness. But the sounds continued, driven by progress, fueled by commerce. Even street lighting contributed, drawing people into late-night activity, encouraging businesses to stay open longer, extending wakefulness far beyond what previous generations knew. And so, as the 19th century unfolded, cities became both magnificent and merciless. They offered endless opportunity, but took from people the quiet, dark nights that human biology had always depended on. For centuries, the night had been sacred, a time to withdraw, to reflect, to sleep in rhythm with the earth. But now, sleep was pushed back, broken up, and competed with the rising noise of civilization. And though many adapted, the cost was growing. Less sleep, lighter sleep, a growing sense of tiredness that would follow humanity into the 20th century and far beyond. As the 20th century arrived, the world of sleep changed once again. For the first time in human history, the bedroom emerged as a truly private space. For thousands of years, sleep had been shared, with families, servants, strangers, or entire communities. But now, with modern homes and apartments, more people could afford something rare, a room of their own. Walls were thicker, doors closed softly behind them. A person could lie down, alone or with a partner, in a quiet, protected chamber free from the noise of neighbors, livestock, or the street. The bedroom became not just a place to sleep, but a place for reflection, reading, romance, and retreat. Interior design magazines celebrated this new ideal. Photos showed well-appointed rooms, soft linens, matching furniture, bedside lamps, and polished wood floors. Advertisements praised mattresses that promised the perfect night's rest. The idea of sleep itself became more personalized. No longer simply a biological need, it was now an element of lifestyle. Sleep hygiene was discussed. Bedtime rituals were marketed. Pillows, blankets, and even sleepwear became part of a growing consumer market. And with this privacy came something else: the return of the self during sleep. People had time to listen to their own breathing, to reflect on their day, to cultivate routines that felt intimate and intentional. In wealthier households, children too began to have their own rooms. No longer sleeping beside parents, they learned to fall asleep alone, a skill previous generations had rarely practiced. Even architecture reflected this shift. Houses were now built with clear separation between public spaces, living rooms, kitchens, dining areas, and private spaces. Bedrooms tucked quietly at the back or upper levels. Hotels adopted the same model. For the first time, travelers could expect not just a shared bed, but a full, private room with a personal door and lock. The cultural meaning of sleep was evolving. Privacy was luxury, quiet was status, and personal comfort became the ultimate sleep goal. But while the bedroom grew more isolated, new challenges were appearing. The pace of life was accelerating, work hours lengthened, city lights stayed on all night. And even within these cozy bedrooms, sleep was not always easy to find. For many, the modern bedroom became a place not only of rest, but also of restlessness. A quiet chamber where worries followed. Bills, schedules, and expectations crept into the dark. And so, while the physical space of sleep had grown more comfortable, the psychological space of sleep was becoming more crowded. The bedroom was now yours alone, but sometimes the hardest part was simply falling asleep. As bedrooms grew more private, another transformation unfolded quietly beneath the sheets: the rise of the mattress industry. For much of human history, people slept on simple surfaces: straw-filled sacks, piles of hay, or wooden planks softened with animal hides. But by the early 20th century, comfort itself became a commodity. Mattress makers began to promise something new: not just a place to sleep, but a better night's sleep, deeper, richer, more luxurious than ever before. Coil springs were introduced. Padding layers grew thicker and more elaborate. Companies competed to design the perfect balance of softness and support. And with each new innovation came clever marketing. Advertisements urged consumers to invest in rest. The best day begins with the best night, they claimed. Wealthier families proudly displayed ornate beds, topped with high-quality mattresses, silk sheets, and multiple pillows. The bedroom was no longer just a place to sleep. It was a sanctuary of comfort, a symbol of personal success. Even mattress brands became household names, symbols of modern sophistication and care for one's health. Companies promised scientifically designed sleep, beds that could reduce back pain, improve circulation, and align the spine perfectly. Sleep comfort evolved from a basic human need into a status symbol, and yet, this comfort was not accessible to all. While wealthier consumers enjoyed multi-layered spring mattresses and feather-stuffed pillows, many working-class families still slept on simple cots or shared beds. The growing divide between luxury and necessity became part of how sleep itself was perceived. To sleep well was no longer just biology. It was now tied to privilege. In magazines and films, images of pristine bedrooms showcased carefully made beds, layered blankets, and plush mattresses with crisp white sheets. Sleep was being sold as an aspirational experience, part of a modern, successful lifestyle. And with the rise of consumer culture after World War II, the mattress market exploded. New materials like foam and latex entered the scene. Adjustable beds were introduced, allowing people to customize their sleep positions. And by the late 20th century, the mattress industry became a multi-billion-dollar business, driven by endless promises of better, deeper, more restorative rest. The message was clear. If you weren't sleeping well, perhaps you simply hadn't bought the right mattress. Comfort had become both a solution and a product. But beneath the surface of all this innovation, one quiet truth remained. Even the finest mattress could not always guarantee peace of mind. Sleep still depended on the ancient rhythm inside the body, a rhythm that luxury alone could not fully restore. While mattresses grew softer and bedrooms became more private, another revolution was quietly unfolding. This time, not in comfort, but in the mind. For centuries, dreams had been seen as spiritual messages, omens, or mysterious symbols from unknown worlds. But in the early 20th century, two men offered a new interpretation, one that would reshape how we think about sleep forever. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. In 1900, Freud published his landmark book, The Interpretation of Dreams. For Freud, dreams were not divine messages, but windows into the unconscious mind, a secret world of hidden desires, repressed fears, and unresolved emotions. He argued that while we sleep, the mind loosens its guard. Forbidden wishes, often rooted in childhood, slip into our dreams, disguised as symbols. A house might represent the self, stairs might symbolize sexual impulses, water could reflect repressed emotion. In Freud's view, dreams were disguised wish fulfillments, coded messages that only careful analysis could decode. Therapy became a way to uncover these meanings, to bring the unconscious into the light of conscious understanding. But Freud was not alone. His student and eventual rival Carl Jung offered a different perspective. For Jung, dreams were not simply personal wish fulfillments. They connected us to a deeper, collective layer of the psyche, the collective unconscious. This vast realm contained archetypes, universal images and symbols shared by all humans, regardless of culture or time. The wise old man, the hero, the mother, the shadow. In dreams, these timeless figures appeared, guiding us towards psychological balance, self-discovery, and spiritual growth. For Jung, dreams were teachers, offering insight, wisdom, and sometimes even warnings. Instead of repressing desire, dreams served as a dialogue between the conscious and unconscious mind. While Freud focused on conflict, Jung focused on integration. Both men, however, agreed on one essential truth. Sleep and dreams are not passive states. They are active, dynamic, meaningful. As their ideas spread, dreams became a subject of fascination for millions. People kept dream journals, discussed their night visions in therapy, and sought hidden meanings in even the smallest details. Entire fields of dream analysis flourished, blending psychology, spirituality, and personal growth. Television, books, and films echoed these ideas, portraying dreams as mysterious doorways to something larger than waking life. And while science would eventually bring new tools to study the brain during sleep, the fascination with dream interpretation never disappeared. Even today, many of us wake from vivid dreams and wonder, what does it mean? What is my mind trying to tell me? Freud and Jung may have offered different maps, but both pointed to the same mystery, that every night, as we close our eyes, we enter a world both strange and deeply personal. A world where meaning still waits to be found. As Freud and Jung explored the mind through dreams, another revolution was quietly taking shape. One rooted not in theory, but in measurement. The scientific study of sleep had begun. In the 1950s, researchers finally had the tools to peek inside the sleeping brain. Using the electroencephalogram, the EEG, scientists could track brainwave patterns as people slept. For the first time in human history, sleep was no longer a mystery hidden behind closed eyelids. It was a field of data, waves, spikes, rhythms, electrical activity flowing across the scalp. And what they discovered was astonishing. Sleep was not one continuous flat state. Instead, it moved in cycles, passing through distinct stages, each with its own pattern of brain activity. The most famous discovery came in 1953, when researchers Eugene Aserinsky and Nathaniel Kleitman observed something never seen before: rapid eye movement, or REM sleep. During REM, the eyes dart beneath closed lids. Breathing quickens, heart rate rises, yet the body remains paralyzed, locked in stillness as vivid emotional dreams unfold. REM became known as the stage most strongly linked to dreaming. But it was only part of the picture. Sleep was shown to cycle through multiple stages every night. Light sleep, stage 1 and 2, where we drift in and out of awareness. Deep sleep, stage 3, when the body repairs itself, strengthens immunity, and consolidates memory. REM sleep, where much of emotional processing and creative dreaming occurs. These stages repeat several times throughout the night, forming 90-minute sleep cycles. Scientists realized that restful sleep wasn't just about duration, but about completing these cycles in balance. A full night's sleep would carry a person through multiple rounds of light sleep, deep sleep, and REM, each stage playing a vital role in health. As research progressed, sleep began to be recognized as a biological necessity, not simply a time of inactivity. The body used sleep to repair tissues, strengthen immune defenses, regulate hormones, process memories and emotions. In a sense, the sleeping brain was incredibly busy, not resting, but working quietly to maintain health. This new understanding shifted medical thinking. Sleep was no longer seen as wasted time or an inconvenience between waking hours. It was a pillar of life, as essential as food, water, and air. Sleep labs were established. Patients wired with electrodes spent nights inside clinics to diagnose problems like insomnia, narcolepsy, and sleep apnea. The science of sleep medicine was born, and though many mysteries remained, the 1950s marked a new era, when sleep finally stepped into the light of scientific observation. The ancient art of dreaming had found its modern counterpart, the laboratory of sleep. As the science of sleep grew in the mid-20th century, so too did a growing awareness of how fragile sleep could be. People were sleeping less. Stress, longer workdays, urban living, and technological advances all made falling asleep and staying asleep more difficult for millions. And so, a search for solutions began. One of the first answers came in the form of medication. In the 1950s and 60s, pharmaceutical companies developed the first widespread class of sleeping pills, the barbiturates. These drugs worked by depressing the central nervous system, helping users fall asleep quickly. Doctors prescribed them freely. Advertisements promised peaceful, effortless sleep, even for the most anxious and restless minds. Barbiturates seemed like a miracle. But over time, problems emerged. They were highly habit-forming. Tolerance built quickly, requiring larger doses. And in some cases, they proved dangerous, leading to overdoses, dependency, and withdrawal symptoms. In response, scientists searched for safer alternatives. In the 1970s, a new class of drugs arrived, the benzodiazepines, medications like diazepam, Valium, and temazepam, Restoril. These drugs were marketed as gentler, safer, and better tolerated. For many, they offered short-term relief from sleepless nights, calming anxiety and easing the transition into sleep. But even these came with risks. Dependence, tolerance, and side effects remained concerns. The modern sleeping pill was born, helpful for some, but never a perfect solution. While medications offered one path, another revolution was unfolding: the rise of sleep clinics. Sleep, once studied only in laboratories, now entered clinical practice. Specialized centers were created to diagnose and treat a growing list of sleep disorders: insomnia, chronic difficulty falling or staying asleep, sleep apnea, dangerous pauses in breathing during sleep, narcolepsy, sudden sleep attacks during waking hours, restless leg syndrome, uncomfortable sensations disrupting rest. Patients were observed overnight, wired to monitors tracking brain waves, heart rate, breathing, and body movement. Technicians analyzed the data, identifying patterns and disturbances invisible to the patient. Treatments ranged from lifestyle changes and counseling to breathing machines like CPAP devices for apnea sufferers. Sleep was no longer a private experience hidden behind closed doors. It had become a medical field with its own specialists, therapies, and research centers. And as awareness grew, the public began to recognize sleep not as a luxury, but as a vital part of health. News articles, public campaigns, and health authorities urged people to take sleep seriously. The message was clear: good sleep equals good health. And yet, despite all these advances, the pills, the clinics, the research, many people still struggled. The modern world offered more control than ever. But with it came new pressures, new distractions, and new obstacles to deep, restful sleep. The science was advancing, but the mystery of sleep remained. As the 20th century progressed, sleep underwent yet another transformation, not in science, not in medicine, but in marketing. Sleep became a product to be sold. Companies recognized that rest was no longer just a basic need, it was an opportunity. An entire industry arose, offering to help people sleep better, longer, deeper, and more comfortably, for a price. Advertisements promised solutions to modern exhaustion: sleep like never before, wake up refreshed, renewed, and ready. The mattress market exploded. Memory foam, adjustable beds, hybrid spring foam designs, all marketed with scientific language and glossy demonstrations. Commercials featured smiling families, serene bedrooms, and perfectly arranged pillows that suggested sleep was not only achievable, but beautiful. Brands competed to offer the perfect night's sleep, often suggesting that failure to invest in their products was a failure to prioritize health itself. Beyond mattresses came an explosion of related goods: specialized pillows for neck support, weighted blankets for anxiety relief, temperature-regulating sheets, blackout curtains to block out city lights. Even white noise machines entered the market, simulating rain, waves, or forest sounds to help drown out urban noise and modern distractions. Sleep was becoming highly customized, shaped by personal preference, technology, and constant upgrades. But it wasn't only physical comfort being sold. Sleep itself was now advertised as a status symbol. Celebrities, executives, and health gurus emphasized the importance of sleep optimization. The wealthy installed advanced sleep systems, hired sleep coaches, and tracked every breath and heartbeat with new devices. In luxury magazines, articles appeared about perfect sleep environments, soundproof rooms, climate-controlled beds, custom lighting systems that simulated sunrise. Sleep was no longer simply free. It was something you could buy. Engineer and perfect. The growing industry even coined new terms: sleep hygiene, habits to improve rest; sleep debt, accumulated exhaustion to be paid back; sleep performance, a measurable outcome to optimize. Entire companies built their brands around sleep products, fueling a market worth billions of dollars. But beneath this glossy surface was a quieter truth. Even as people bought more and more to improve their sleep, many continued to struggle. Stress, long work hours, late-night technology, and constant stimulation still made it difficult for many to fall and stay asleep. And so the paradox grew. The more we tried to control sleep, the more elusive it sometimes became. The ancient act of simply closing one's eyes had now become a complex negotiation between body, mind, lifestyle, and commerce. Sleep had moved from the forest floor, from medieval cottages, from communal chambers to become a marketplace. And yet, for all the marketing, for all the products, for all the promises, the most profound truth remained. Sleep still came best when we allowed it, not forced it. When we followed the simple rhythm written into our biology long ago, the rhythm we had slowly forgotten. As the 21st century arrived, the world became more connected than ever before. Computers, smartphones, tablets, glowing screens entered every corner of life. They brought us knowledge, entertainment, and endless communication. But they also brought something far less visible: sleep disruption. At the heart of this disruption lies one simple truth: light controls sleep. Our bodies still respond to light, just as they did thousands of years ago. Sunlight triggers wakefulness, darkness signals rest. But the light from screens, phones, laptops, televisions carries a specific type of brightness: blue light. Blue light wavelengths strongly suppress melatonin, the hormone that prepares us for sleep. Even small doses can delay the body's natural bedtime rhythm. When we scroll through social media, watch late-night shows, or answer emails under bright screens, we are unknowingly telling our brain, "It's still daytime, stay awake." Studies have shown that just 30 minutes of blue light exposure before bed can delay sleep by hours. Sleep becomes lighter. Dreams become more fragmented, morning fatigue grows, and yet many people carry their phones into bed, keeping them close on nightstands, or even under their pillows. Notifications ping at all hours, texts, alerts, news updates. The brain remains on call even in the quiet of the night. This hyperconnectivity fuels a modern epidemic: revenge, bedtime procrastination. People delay sleep, not because they aren't tired, but because they crave personal time after long days of work and responsibility. They scroll, browse, watch, and consume, sacrificing sleep for fleeting moments of control. The cycle repeats: late nights, early mornings, growing exhaustion. The digital world is always awake, but our bodies were never designed for 24/7 stimulation. And while devices offer convenience, they also strip away the gentle environmental cues that once guided us into restful sleep. The dimming firelight, the setting sun, the quiet hush of evening. Today, we replace those with glowing screens, stimulating content and constant input. Even modern lighting in homes, LED bulbs and bright overheads add to the problem. Bedrooms, once dark sanctuaries, now glow with artificial brightness long past sundown. But awareness is growing. Some devices now include night modes, reducing blue light output after sunset. Blue light blocking glasses have become popular. Apps remind users to disconnect and wind down, and yet the temptation remains. The digital world is always just one click away, and sleep, ancient, delicate, deeply rooted in our biology, remains vulnerable. As we navigate the digital age, the question lingers: will we learn to protect sleep, or will we continue to trade it away for another scroll? Another video, another restless night? In the digital age, as our world grows brighter, busier and faster, sleep disorders are becoming more common than ever before. Insomnia now affects millions of people worldwide. The once natural ability to fall asleep easily, to surrender to the night, has become a struggle for many. People lie awake, staring at the ceiling, minds racing with thoughts they cannot silence. Work, stress, family worries, financial pressures, endless lists of tasks unfinished. The bedroom, once a place of comfort, can feel like a battlefield, where the harder one tries to sleep, the more distant sleep becomes. This anxiety-driven insomnia is not simply a matter of bad habits. It's deeply connected to our modern pace of life. The constant demands on attention, the difficulty of disconnecting, and the pressure to perform at all hours. For some, these restless nights become chronic, leading to cycles of exhaustion, irritability, and impaired concentration. But insomnia is only part of the growing problem. Another serious and often hidden threat is sleep apnea. In sleep apnea, breathing repeatedly stops and starts throughout the night. The most common form, obstructive sleep apnea, occurs when throat muscles relax too much, blocking the airway. The brain, sensing oxygen levels dropping, briefly wakes the body to resume breathing. These awakenings may last only seconds, but they fragment sleep hundreds of times each night. Many who suffer from sleep apnea are unaware of these interruptions. They simply wake feeling exhausted, with morning headaches, dry mouth, and a fog that lingers throughout the day. Left untreated, apnea increases the risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, diabetes. Treatment often involves the use of CPAP machines, devices that keep airways open during sleep with gentle air pressure. For many, these machines offer life-changing relief, yet millions still remain undiagnosed, living daily with the silent consequences of broken, shallow sleep. Beyond apnea and insomnia, anxiety-related sleep loss has surged. Modern life brings constant stimulation and worry, news cycles that never end, social media comparison, financial instability, global crises looming on every screen. The brain, constantly fed with information, struggles to power down at night. Even when the lights are off, the mind keeps scrolling, replaying conversations, imagining worst-case scenarios. This chronic arousal state keeps the body's fight or flight system partially activated, making restful, deep sleep harder to achieve. The modern world has not only shortened our sleep, it has invaded it. Sleep disorders are no longer rare. They are becoming a global epidemic, touching every culture, every class, every age group. And as science works to understand these growing challenges, the solutions often point not to more technology, but to something far older, a return to balance, to rhythm, to quiet, to honoring the natural cycles our bodies have followed for thousands of years. Sleep, at its core, remains as simple and essential as it ever was. It is we who have complicated it. In response to rising sleep struggles, the modern world has created a new wave of tools and technologies to help us reclaim what we've lost. Sleep has now entered the world of data. One of the most popular tools is the sleep tracker. Worn on wrists or placed beneath mattresses, these devices monitor heart rate, breathing patterns, movements, sleep stages. Every morning, users wake not only to face the day, but to check their sleep scores, how long they slept, how many times they woke up, how much deep or REM sleep they achieved. This data offers insight. Patterns emerge. Users tweak their habits, adjusting bedtime, cutting caffeine, controlling light exposure. For some, this biofeedback helps them sleep better, but for others it brings new anxiety, worrying about sleep performance, becoming obsessed with perfect scores. The act of monitoring rest can sometimes disrupt the very rest it seeks to improve. Alongside trackers, technology has entered the bed itself. Smart beds now adjust firmness in real time. Sensors inside mattresses detect body position, shifting to relieve pressure points. Some beds monitor temperature, cooling or warming throughout the night to match the body's natural sleep cycle. Sleep has become a highly engineered experience, fine-tuned by algorithms trying to replicate what nature once offered freely. Yet, not all solutions are mechanical. Many turn to ASMR, autonomous sensory meridian response, for comfort. Soft whispers, gentle tapping, and calming sounds streamed online help quiet anxious minds. Millions listen to ASMR videos before bed, recreating the soothing sensations of close, personal attention. In a world filled with digital noise, these quiet, repetitive sounds offer a strange, modern version of bedtime stories. And then there's melatonin, a supplement now commonly sold in pharmacies and grocery stores. Melatonin is a hormone naturally produced by the brain in response to darkness. Supplements aim to boost its levels, helping people fall asleep faster. For some, it works, especially for those suffering from jet lag or mild circadian disruptions. But melatonin is not a universal fix. Taking too much can disrupt natural hormone cycles, leaving people groggy or dependent. Its effectiveness varies widely, and long-term impacts are still being studied. What these modern tools reflect is both our incredible innovation and our growing desperation. We live in a time where sleep, once natural and effortless, now requires gadgets, apps, supplements, and endless guidance. Technology tries to repair the very imbalance it helped create. The glowing screens that robbed us of rest now offer digital solutions to help us sleep again. But perhaps the greatest lesson is not found in devices or data, but in rediscovering the simple truths of sleep itself: darkness, stillness, rhythm, a gentle surrender to the ancient biology we all carry inside. Even in the age of machines, the most restorative sleep remains beautifully, stubbornly human. As the modern world struggles with sleep, some have begun to look backward, searching for older rhythms in hopes of finding rest. And one ancient pattern has resurfaced: segmented sleep. Across the internet, forums and blogs buzz with renewed interest in breaking sleep into parts, just as many of our ancestors once did. This practice is often called polyphasic sleep, sleeping in multiple periods throughout the 24-hour cycle. For some, this means dividing the night into 2 or more segments. For others, it means experimenting with extreme schedules, 20-minute naps every few hours, the Uberman schedule, multiple short naps across the day, the everyman schedule, 1 core nap with several shorter rests. Advocates claim these patterns increase productivity, free up hours of waking time, and align with natural cycles of alertness and fatigue. They argue that history supports these patterns. After all, medieval villagers once rose between first and second sleeps, using the quiet hours for prayer, reading, or reflection. In some hunter-gatherer tribes, community members nap during the hottest parts of the day, then stay active into the cool night. Might our modern insistence on one unbroken block of sleep be an artificial construct of industrial timekeeping? Perhaps. But polyphasic sleep remains controversial. Sleep scientists caution that while short-term experiments may seem sustainable, extreme schedules often conflict with the body's need for consolidated deep sleep and REM cycles. Fragmented sleep can disrupt memory consolidation, emotional regulation, immune function, and physical recovery. The 90-minute sleep cycle, moving through light sleep, deep sleep, and REM, serves vital biological functions that may not be fully achieved in very brief naps. In addition, many polyphasic schedules are difficult to maintain long-term in modern society, where work, family, and social life still expect predictable hours. Yet for some individuals, particularly those with flexible schedules or unique biological patterns, certain forms of segmented or biphasic sleep may feel natural and restorative. Some cultures today still embrace naps, like the siesta tradition in Mediterranean countries or the midday breaks in parts of Asia. These natural pauses reflect humanity's deep, ancient relationship with rest. What the polyphasic trend reveals most is our growing desire to experiment, to reclaim control over sleep in a world that often seems to steal it away. Technology enables the tracking. Online communities share the results. And slowly, a dialogue continues. Are we meant to sleep one way or many? Is our modern sleep problem the result of too little sleep or too rigid a structure? The answers may not be simple, but what's clear is this: humans are still searching for rest, for balance, for a way back to the peaceful surrender that once came so easily beneath stars and firelight, long before the ticking of clocks. In this age of glowing screens and endless noise, many people are rediscovering a simple truth: the mind must quiet before the body can rest. And so, a new wave of sleep support has emerged, one not based in machines, but in mindfulness and soothing sound. Mindfulness, once an ancient meditation practice, has now become one of the most popular tools to help people drift into sleep. Guided meditations walk listeners gently through breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation, and calming visualizations. The goal is simple: slow the breath, release tension, quiet the racing thoughts. As the mind unwinds, the body follows. Mindfulness doesn't force sleep. Instead, it creates the conditions where sleep can return naturally. Alongside meditation has come a surge of sleep podcasts, entire audio shows designed not to entertain or stimulate, but to lull the listener into calm. Storytellers speak in low, slow voices. The narratives are often meandering, gently nonsensical, designed to occupy the mind, just enough to keep anxious thoughts at bay while allowing the body to surrender to rest. Long pauses, soft words, gentle ambient sounds behind every sentence. These podcasts create a bedtime ritual for millions. A familiar voice, a predictable rhythm, a modern echo of the bedtime stories told beside ancient fires or medieval hearths. And then there is ASMR, where soft whispers, tapping, brushing, and gentle sounds create physical sensations of relaxation, often described as tingles. For many, ASMR content serves as a nightly companion, replacing restless silence with calming, repetitive patterns that help the brain disengage. YouTube channels, streaming platforms, and apps offer endless hours of these gentle sounds, free or subscription-based, as part of a growing industry built around sleep support. Even your channel, with its calm narration, slow pacing, and soft-spoken style, is part of this powerful modern shift, helping people not by analyzing their dreams or prescribing pills, but simply by providing the one thing they crave most: calm presence. The voice in the dark. The slow unraveling of the mind from the worries of the day. Studies show that audio-based sleep aids can significantly reduce sleep onset latency, meaning people fall asleep faster when they have soothing content to listen to. And importantly, they create a sense of safety, a feeling that someone is keeping watch, guiding gently, allowing rest to take over. In this way, modern sleep podcasts, mindfulness guides, and audio content are not entirely new. They are simply modern versions of ancient rituals. The elder telling stories to a tribe, the parent softly singing to a child, the trusted voice that carries us across the fragile border between wakefulness and sleep. And as the world continues to spin faster, these quiet spaces, built of sound, breath, and kindness, remind us that sometimes the most effective sleep aid is simply being soothed. As we look to the future, sleep faces a strange crossroads. The world grows faster. More people work across time zones, operate in shifts, stay connected at all hours. Globalization has created a 24/7 culture, where the line between day and night blurs entirely. In many ways, sleep has become both more precious and more threatened than ever before. But with growing challenges have also come new innovations. Researchers now study sleep genetics, unlocking why some people need more or less sleep based on their unique biological makeup. Technology companies develop wearable devices that monitor brainwaves, breathing, and movement with astonishing precision. Smart homes adjust temperature, lighting, and sound automatically to create ideal sleep conditions. Some experimental treatments even explore the possibility of targeted brain stimulation to enhance deep sleep and memory consolidation. Artificial intelligence may soon help design hyper-personalized sleep schedules based on individual chronotypes, allowing each person to rest at exactly the times best suited to their biology. But even as science advances, the essential truth remains unchanged. The human brain still needs rest. No pill, no machine, no schedule hack can fully replace the natural cycles our bodies evolved to follow. And while some dream of compressing sleep to squeeze more hours from each day, others argue that sleep is not a problem to solve, but a gift to protect. In recent years, public awareness has grown. Schools debate later start times for teenagers. Companies explore workplace napping pods. Sleep coaches and wellness programs emphasize rest as a pillar of mental and physical health. In some ways, society is beginning to remember what our ancestors once knew instinctively, that to rest is not weakness, that sleep is not lost time. It is healing, it is renewal, it is the quiet rhythm that has carried every human life from ancient caves to modern bedrooms. To the digital screens of today, the future of rest may hold incredible tools, but in the end, the most powerful secret to sleep may still be the simplest one: darkness, safety, quiet, and the gentle surrender to the mystery that has cradled us for millennia. As long as humans walk this earth, no matter how much the world changes, one truth will remain: we all must sleep. And in that nightly journey, we return, again and again, to the most ancient rhythm of all,